It was close to midnight when my shift was supposed to end, but something in me told me to keep driving. The city was half asleep, its lights bleeding into the fog that rolled across the empty streets. My name's Marcus Hale, and I've been a driver all my life. Buses, taxis, ride shares, you name it. Driving paid the bills, but sometimes it also brought you face to face with stories you wish you'd never witnessed. That night, rain started to pour like the heavens were trying to wash something away. My wipers squeaked across the windshield, fighting a losing battle. I was heading back home when I saw him, a man standing on the side of the road near an old gas station, drenched to the bone, holding a cardboard sign that said only one word: help. He looked about 60, maybe older. His hair was gray, his beard rough and overgrown. He wasn't just wet, he looked empty, like the world had forgotten he existed. Something in me hesitated. You see, growing up black in this city, I learned not to stop for just anyone. Too many times, kindness turned into trouble. But that man's eyes, they weren't desperate. They were tired, like someone who'd already lost everything. I rolled down the window. "You good, sir?" I asked, my voice cautious. He stepped closer. Just need a ride, son. Somewhere warm." His voice trembled, but not from the cold. I don't know what made me to do it. Maybe it was the way he said son, or maybe I saw something familiar, a brokenness I'd known once myself. So I unlocked the door. "Hop in," I said, "but don't bleed on the seats." He gave a dry chuckle and climbed in, water dripping from his coat. I turned up the heat and started driving. "Name's Marcus," I said. "Where you headed?" He didn't answer right away. He stared out the window, watching the rain. Name's Robert. Anywhere but here." I laughed softly. "That bad, huh?" "You could say that." His clothes looked old but not filthy. His shoes were expensive once, just worn down. The kind of shoes men wear when they used to have money. I noticed a faded gold ring on his finger. Not cheap either. "Got family?" I asked. He turned to me, eyes suddenly sharp. "Had," he said. Just one word, heavy as a brick. We drove in silence for a while. The radio hummed quietly, a soul song from the 70s, something my mom used to play. "You can drop me at the diner up ahead," he said. "I figure to rest out." But the diner lights were off, closed for the night. "Tell you what," I said, "you look half dead, man. I got a spare couch in my place. You can dry off, rest a bit, no funny business." He looked at me like he couldn't believe it. "You do that? For me?" I shrugged. "Ain't no one deserves to freeze in the rain." He nodded, voice quiet. "You're a good man, Marcus." My apartment wasn't much. One bedroom, peel and paint, couch that seen better days. But it was warm, and I had instant coffee. He sat there, shivering under an old blanket while I microwaved water. "Lost your home?" I asked gently. He stared at the steam rising from the cup. "You could say I lost everything that mattered." "Job?" He shook his head. "Life." I didn't push. Sometimes silence speaks louder than questions. When he finally spoke again, his voice was cracked and uneven. "I had a son once. Haven't seen him in years. My fault." I nodded slowly. "Family's tricky." He looked at me, and for the first time, his eyes softened. "You remind me of him, actually. Always helping people. Always giving more than he had." I smiled faintly. "He must have been a good man." "He was," Robert said. Then he whispered, "Still is, I hope." We talked for hours that night, about life, regrets, faith, the kind of things two broken men talk about when the world outside is too cold to face. Eventually, he fell asleep on the couch, and I just sat there staring at him. Something about him didn't fit the story. His hands were clean, nails trimmed, no sign of life on the streets. I brushed it off. Not my business. I'd done my part. But something told me this man wasn't who he seemed. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Real coffee, not instant. Robert was already up, standing by the kitchen counter like he'd lived there for years. "Morning," he said. "I hope you don't mind. I found some grounds in the cabinet." I blinked. "You're full of surprises." He smiled faintly. "Old habits." There was something refined in the way he moved, precise, deliberate, like someone used to control, not chaos. "You worked in business or something?" I asked casually. He froze for a second, then gave a faint smile. "Something like that." Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed. My landlord again, overdue rent, same old story. I sighed, turning away. Robert watched me quietly. "You struggling?" he asked softly. I laughed bitterly. "Welcome to America." He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket. "Here, for letting me stay." He handed me a folded $100 bill. I frowned. "Man, I can't take that." "Please," he said firmly. "Think of it as a thank you. You gave me something I haven't had in a long time. Kindness." I stared at him, unsure what to say. There was sincerity in his voice, but also something else. Guilt. Deep, old guilt. "All right," I said finally, taking it. "But only if you tell me who you really are." He smiled sadly. "Soon, Marcus, I promise." That night, we sat watching TV, some old news segment about corporate fraud and missing executives. I wasn't really paying attention until I caught a glimpse of a familiar face. The anchor's voice echoed. "Authorities continue to search for Robert Langford, CEO of Langford Industries, accused of embezzling millions before vanishing 3 years ago." My blood went cold. I turned to him slowly. He was staring at the screen, face pale, hands trembling. "Robert?" I whispered. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. "I told you, Marcus. I lost everything that mattered." The air in the room went still. My heart pounded in my chest as the rain began to fall again outside, just like the night we met. And that's when I realized the man I'd taken in wasn't just a homeless stranger. He was a fugitive, and I was the only one who knew where he was. I sat there frozen, eyes locked on the TV screen. The words burned into me like a brand. Fugitive CEO, Robert Langford, still missing. The picture showed a younger man, clean-shaven, confident, the kind of man who'd never look twice at someone like me. But even through the wrinkles, the beard, the tired eyes, it was him. The man sitting in my apartment drinking my cheap coffee was the same man who'd stolen millions and disappeared. "Robert," I whispered again, voice trembling. He didn't deny it. He didn't run. He just sighed and turned the TV off. "I guess it was only a matter of time," he said softly. "You were bound to find out." I stood up, heart pounding. "You lied to me." "I didn't," he said calmly. "I told you my name. You just never asked the rest." My fists clenched. "You told me you lost everything. You didn't say it was because you took everything." He looked up at me with those weary eyes, the kind that it seemed too much. He asked, "Do you think it's that simple? You think I ran because I was guilty?" "What else would I think?" I snapped. "The news said you stole millions." He leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "I didn't steal anything. I tried to expose someone who did." For a moment, the only sound was the rain tapping the window. "I built that company from the ground up. Langford Industries wasn't just my name, it was my life. But the board? They were dirty. They were moving money, covering up deals with defense contracts, things that would have destroyed lives overseas. I found the proof, went to the authorities, but before I could testify..." He paused, eyes glistening. "They framed me, made it look like I was the one who took the money. My wife, she didn't believe me. My son stopped calling.
And by the time I realized how deep it went, there was no one left to trust. I just stood there, unsure what to believe. Maybe it was the way he spoke, not desperate, not defensive, just tired, like a man who'd accepted that no one would ever know the truth. "Why not go back and clear your name?" I asked quietly. He laughed bitterly. "You can't clear your name when the people who ruined you own the courtroom." I sat down slowly. "So you've been running for 3 years?" He nodded, running, hiding, praying for a miracle. Until that night. Until you stopped. His words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't stop for a miracle. I just saw someone who needed help. He smiled faintly. "That's what makes you different, Marcus. You see people. Not their stories, not their mistakes, just people." I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I had seen people all my life, from the front seat of my car, from the other side of a tinted window. Rich, poor, black, white, they all looked the same when they needed a ride. But nobody ever looked at me the way I looked at them. Until now. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that headline, "Wanted Fugitive Still Missing." If someone found out I was harboring him, I could lose everything: my license, my freedom, my life. But then I thought of his trembling hands, his haunted eyes, the way he thanked me like no one ever had before. He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't cruel. He was just broken. And somehow helping him made me feel whole. By dawn, I'd made my mind. "Robert," I said, shaking him awake, "you can't stay here." He looked at me with understanding, not anger. "I know. I'll drive you somewhere safe, somewhere far from the city. But you have to promise me something." "What's that?" "That you'll tell me the truth about everything. No more half stories." He nodded slowly. "Deal." We packed what little he had: an old wallet, a photo of a boy in a baseball uniform, and a torn letter he never let go of. Before we left, he looked around my small apartment one last time. "You live humble," he said softly. "I live honest," I replied. He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I ended up here. Maybe I needed to see what that looks like again." The road stretched ahead of us like a gray ribbon, endless and quiet. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy. As we drove, he started to talk not like a CEO, but like a father confessing to his son. He told me about his son, Eli. "He was about your age when I disappeared. He thought I abandoned him. The night I left, he called me a coward. You ever try to reach him?" "Every day," he whispered. "But he changed his number. I write letters I never send. He wouldn't read them anyway." He stared out the window. "I wasn't a perfect father, but I never lied to him. Until the end." "What'd you lie about?" He looked down at the ring on his finger. "That I'd come back soon." We drove for hours until we reached a quiet diner near the state line, one of those places where no one asks questions. He wanted to stretch his legs, so I parked across the street and followed him inside. He ordered black coffee. I sat opposite him, watching him trace circles on the cup with his fingers. There was a heaviness in the air, like he knew something I didn't. Then I noticed a car parked outside. Dark, tinted windows, engine still running. Something in my gut twisted. "Robert," I said quietly, "you expecting someone?" He followed my gaze, and his face went pale. "No, not again." Before I could ask what he meant, 2 men stepped out of the car. Suits, sunglasses, that kind of clean-cut danger you can smell before you see it. Robert's hand started to shake. "Marcus, listen to me. If they come in, don't say a word. Whatever happens, don't get involved." "Who are they?" "People who made me disappear." The men walked in, scanning the diner like they owned it. One of them locked eyes with Robert. "Mr. Langford." We've been looking for you." He didn't flinch. "Then I guess you finally found me." The other man's gaze turned to me. "And you are," I swallowed hard, "just his driver." Robert glanced at me, a look that said, "Thank you." They told him to stand. He did, calm, quiet, dignified. And then, as they were leading him out, he turned to me. "Marcus," he said, voice trembling, "if you ever see a man standing in the rain with a sign again, stop, no matter who he is." And then he was gone. Hours later, I was still sitting in that booth, staring at his untouched cup of coffee. Part of me wanted to believe they were cops, but something about them, the silence, the way the diner owner wouldn't look at me, told me they weren't. I drove back home, but the apartment felt different, empty, like he'd taken something with him when he left. When I got there, I saw an envelope on the kitchen table. My name was written on it, neat, precise handwriting. Inside was a folded letter and a check. I unfolded it slowly. The check was for $100,000, and the letter said, "For the man who saw a human being when the world saw a fugitive. Use it to build the life I lost. Namest Robert Langford." I never saw him again. But a week later, I saw the news. Body found near Riverside Motel, suspected suicide. Former CEO Robert Langford. My heart shattered. I turned off the TV and just sat there. The letter in my hands, tears blurring the words. He didn't run this time. Maybe he just stopped running. And for the first time in a long while, I prayed. Not for him, but for forgiveness, because deep down, I wondered if I'd saved him too late.
A week had passed since the news broke. The world had already moved on. One more fallen millionaire, another forgotten scandal. But not me. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The rain, his eyes, the way he said my name before they took him. I kept the envelope on my kitchen table, unopened except for the check. Something about the letter felt unfinished, like he wanted me to read between the lines. But every time I looked at it, guilt burned in my chest. I'd promised to protect him, and he ended up dead. The world saw a criminal. I saw a man trying to make peace before his story ended. Still, there was something off. The report said, "Suspected suicide." No note, no witnesses. But the Robert I knew, he wasn't the kind to give up. He'd already lost everything and survived. Why end it now? I told myself to let it go, but the more I tried, the louder that small voice got, the one that whispered, "Something's not right." So, one night, I opened the letter again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Faint indentations on the back of the paper, like he'd written something underneath, then torn the top page away. I held it up to the light, and there it was. A second message, barely visible, pressed into the paper. "Find Eli." My heart stopped. Eli, his son. I didn't know where to start. I didn't even know if Eli was still alive. But if Robert had written that message before he died, or before he disappeared, then maybe this wasn't the end. I searched online, scrolling through page after page until I found something. Eli Langford, youth advocate, community shelter coordinator, Southside. I stared at the screen, disbelief washing over me. Southside was my neighborhood. The shelter was a worn-out brick building with a faded sign that read Haven House. Inside, the air smelled of soup and old stories. I walked past rows of cots until I saw him, mid-30s, brown hair, kind eyes. He was helping a little girl tie her shoelace, smiling like someone who'd been taught compassion the hard way. When he looked up, I saw it. The same eyes as Robert. "Eli?" I asked quietly. "Yeah? Do I know you?" I swallowed hard. "No, but I knew your father." His face changed. The light in his eyes dimmed. "My father," he said bitterly. "If you're here to talk about him, you can leave." "Please," I said. "It's not what you think. He wanted me to find you." He hesitated, then nodded towards an empty office. We went inside. "Start talking," he said, folding his arms. I told him everything. The night I found Robert in the rain, the diner, the men in suits, the letter. His expression didn't change, until I mentioned the check. "He left you money?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, 100 grand. Said it was for me to build a better life." Eli looked down, shaking his head. "That sounds like him, trying to make things right too late. Did you know what really happened? He said he was framed." Eli let out a bitter laugh. "That's what I wanted to believe for years. But when the news came out, my mom was already sick. The scandal killed her. I hated him for that. I thought he ran because he was guilty." I looked at him carefully. "And now?" He sighed. "Now, I don't know. Maybe I hate him because he didn't fight harder to prove he wasn't." I pulled the letter from my pocket and handed it to him. "Eli, this wrote for you." "He wrote this for you, Eli, not me. I think he left that money for both of us." Eli unfolded the note, reading the words over and over. His lips trembled. This was his handwriting," he whispered. "But there's something else here. Look, at the bottom." He turned the page, and faintly, underneath the signature, were 3 letters written in pen so faint you could barely see them. H. H. "Haven House," I murmured. He stared at me. "You think he knew I worked here?" "I think it's not a coincidence." We searched through the shelter records together that night. Eli pulled out an old donation ledger from before he joined, dated 2 years back. One name stood out: anonymous $250,000. He flipped the page. There was a note attached. "In memory of those who fall when they try to do right. For Eli, whether you forgive me or not." Tears welled in Eli's eyes. He found me. He knew where I was the whole time. The realization hit both of us like a storm. Robert hadn't killed himself, not right after he framed me. He'd been watching, making sure his son was okay. The check he left me wasn't just for me. It was part of his last act, to set things right in the only way he could. Eli looked at me, voice breaking. He helped me and never said a word. He just kept sending money under fake names. I thought it was some charity donor. I nodded slowly. He wasn't running from his guilt. He was running from the people who would have silenced him for good. Eli wiped his eyes. "Then those men, the ones who took him." I finished the sentence for him. "They didn't come to arrest him." The silence between us was heavy, but not empty. It was filled with truth and grief. Over the next few weeks, we worked together to trace the funds, dig up what he'd tried to expose. Eli found old encrypted files his father had emailed him years ago, ones he never opened. When we finally cracked them, they revealed everything: bank statements, offshore accounts, proof of government kickbacks, enough to bring down names that had buried his father alive. We took it to a journalist Robert had once trusted. Within days, the story broke nationwide. Headlines screamed, "New evidence clears late CEO Robert Langford. Whistleblower, not thief." They showed his picture again on every channel, this time not as a fugitive,
but as a man who died trying to tell the truth. I stood outside the shelter that evening as the sunset painted the sky gold. The city was quiet, but something inside me felt lighter, like I'd finally finished a journey that wasn't even mine to begin with. Eli walked up beside me. "You ever think it's strange," he said softly, "how you just happened to be there that night?" I smiled faintly. "I think some people are sent to finish what others started." He nodded. "My father used to say, 'The road gives you what you need, not what you want.' Maybe he was right." I looked at the clouds glowing orange above the rooftops. He was. Months passed. I used part of the check to start a small driving company, Langford Transit. A few cars, local hires, fair wages. I hired veterans, single moms, anyone who needed a second chance. The rest I donated to Haven House. Sometimes when I drive at night and the rain starts to fall, I still see him in the reflection, sitting in the passenger seat, quiet, thoughtful, alive in memory. "Where to this time, Robert?" I whisper, and in the silence I almost hear him say, "Anywhere but here." The world may remember him as a scandal, but I'll remember him as the man who taught me that sometimes the truth hides behind the face of a broken stranger, and that the people we choose to help often end up saving us instead. Because if I hadn't stopped that night, the truth about him, about everything, would have died in the rain.